has expired. The member for McMahon has.
Thanks very much, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Treasurer. Yesterday, the Minister for Education said the government school funding from 2018 is, and I quote, indicative only. But on the same day, the Minister for Finance said, and I quote, the formula that we've put into the trajectory beyond 2018 is the number that's currently reflected in the budget, and that reflects the government's policies position. Treasurer, who is right?
The member for Lyons will cease interjecting. The Treasurer has the call.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and I thank the member for his question. In case he missed it, I'll run it through. In 2015-16, the schools funding is $15.7 billion. The next year, it goes up by 8.1% to $17 billion. The next year, it goes up by 6% to $18 billion. The year after that, it goes up by 4% to $18.7 billion. So, Mr Speaker, every single year, this government is increasing funding to public schools and schools in this country, Mr Speaker. That's what we're doing, and we are doing that, Mr Speaker. We are doing that at the same time as I read out the increases in the expenditure that we're putting into schools. Expenditure as a share of GDP in this country is falling from 25.9% to 25.3%. Now, I make that point for this very critical reason. We are funding these increases by savings in the budget, by actually reducing expenditure and having priorities that ensure that we can fund these very things. Now, Mr Speaker, that's not the approach of those opposite. Those opposite, if they'd come and said, well, here are the savings that we're going to do to fund increases in other areas, that's a different issue, Mr Speaker. That's a different issue. This fellow won't do that.
The Treasurer will resume his seat. The member for Griffith and the Leader of the House will cease interjecting. The member for McMahon on a point of order.
Thanks, Mr Speaker. The Treasurer is now well into his answer. The point of order is that he was asked about the contradiction between two cabinet ministers specifically. He has not dealt with that at all. I would ask you to require him to be directly relevant to the question.
Just before I call the Treasurer, the Treasurer is being relevant to the subject of the question, but he will now bring himself to the specific question that was asked with respect to the quotes. Quotes from both ministers.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I've been very clear about what those funding commitments are for the government and the budget and the forward estimates as they're set out in those documents, and I'm surprised that the member opposite isn't aware of that. And the point I'm making is we are supporting the increases in funding for public schools and education in this country by getting control of government expenditure in other areas so we can afford it. Now, those opposite, Mr Speaker, do not have such a plan.
Has the Treasurer concluded his answer? Treasurer has concluded.